In 1889, Ethiopia and Italy signed what looked like a pretty standard treaty. However, they agreed to completely different things. Maybe it was foul play, but it turns out both parties didn't read the terms of service and only one got to rewrite these. Ethiopian emperors justified their reign and their power based on a story in the Kebra Nagast, aka the Glory of Kings. It's an old Ethiopian text from the 14th century telling a story from 2000 years back. It's very rich in biblical narrative, local tradition, and royal propaganda. It was and is to this day very central to Ethiopian identity. In a sense, it starts with a love story like Romeo and Juliet. In our case, it's Makeda, Queen of Sheba, and King Solomon, King of Israel. Makeda herself ruled over the Shabean kingdom, which, as per the legend, extended over ancient Ethiopia. One day she hears from this wisdom-rich King Solomon and travels to him to Jerusalem to test him with riddles and questions.
If you know what I mean.
According to Ethiopian tradition and to everyone's surprise, King Solomon impresses her with his wisdom and they sleep together. On her return journey back to Ethiopia, she realizes she's pregnant. She gives birth to Menelik I and establishes the Solomonic dynasty. Future Ethiopian emperors would therefore claim descent from Menelik I, making them part of the House of David, giving them a sacred right to rule, just like biblical kings. Later, as a young adult, Menelik I travels to his father to Jerusalem. They get along, and proud of his son, King Solomon asks him to stay, but Menelik's love to Ethiopia was too strong, so he returned. It was even so strong he brought him a souvenir, and the souvenir was none other than the Ark of the Covenant. This can be a story in itself, so please let me know if you wish a video about this. Anyways, King Solomon was furious when he learns the Ark is gone, but God tells him that it's in his will and the Ark is now where it's supposed to be. From then on, being an Ethiopian emperor wasn't just politics, it was sacred. According to Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, it is now hidden in the Aksum's church of Our Lady Mary of Zion and guarded by a single monk who is not allowed to leave the premise or talk to anyone ever. And so the Ark stayed guarded in silence by one man and venerated by millions. From that moment on, being emperor of Ethiopia meant more than just wearing a crown. It meant holding a divine legacy. But that's the thing, legend eventually fades into history, and centuries later out of this myth rises a real powerhouse, the Kingdom of Aksum. The Kingdom of Aksum rises in what is now northern Ethiopia and Eritrea, and unlike the Queen of Sheba, this one we've got receipts for. Coins, obelisks, inscriptions, they weren't just telling stories, they were building an empire. And around the 4th century something big happens. Ethiopia goes full Christian. That's right, while Rome was still trying to figure things out, Aksum was already baptizing emperors. All this thanks to a teenager named Frumentius, who ended up converting King Ezana and basically putting Ethiopia on the biblical VIP list. Frumentius was a Syrian Christian who sailed towards India where his vessel was attacked by Aksum. All of the crew except for him and his brother were killed. He was then taken to the royal court of Aksum as a slave. There he grew up and became an advisor to the king and the babysitter to the prince and later King Ezana. Frumentius was later allowed to travel to become a bishop and spread Christianity in Aksum. Fast forward to the late 1800s, Aksum Kingdom now being the Ethiopian Empire. It's still standing and still independent, and now under the rule of King Menelik II. Not the Ark guy, but the guy who took being a king seriously, very seriously. He starts off as a king of a region called Shiva, but by 1889 he levels up to become an emperor of Ethiopia. But Menelik isn't just about titles, he's a builder. He brings in roads, schools, and telegraphs. He buys weapons from Europe, but also plays Europe like a chessboard. France, Russia, Italy, Spain, they are all trying to get a slice, and he's just smiling, nodding, and stockpiling rifles. Ethiopia is modernizing and trading, but it's also watching. And when Italy thinks it can sneak in some colonial fine print,
do me a favor, please. Get out of here. Get out of here, man. Shit, I'm saying.
now while Menelik is building roads and dodging European nonsense, something is cooking in Europe. It's the Scramble for Africa, aka the moment where every European empire suddenly remembered they loved tropical real estate. Britain, France, Belgium, Germany, they're all snatching up territories like it's on sale. And then there's Italy, late to the party, only grabbed Eritrea and kinda insecure about it.
New card. What do you think?
Whoa, very nice. Look at that.
It's very cool, Bateman, but that's nothing. Look at this.
That is really nice. Pale nimbus. White.
Something wrong? Patrick? You're sweating.
So in this case, what's the plan? Easy. grab Ethiopia, stitch it together with Eritrea, and create Italian East Africa. But Menelik's no pushover. This brings us to the sneaky treaty. So Italy plays nice, they hand over a piece of paper, the Treaty of Wuchale. Seems harmless, right? Just a little diplomacy between pals, but here's the kicker. There were two versions of this treaty. The Amharic version, which was the one Menelik saw, basically said, hey, no stress, it's just a partnership. If you need any help with foreign affairs, we can help. The Italian version, on the other hand, it claimed Ethiopia must conduct foreign affairs through Italy only. In short, Menelik thought he signed a friendship pact, but Italy thought they just gained a colony. Later, Menelik finds out about the sneaky clause, and he's like,
hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
And ripped the paper. And Italy, they were fuming. Losing their would-be colony didn't sit well with them. They ramped up the pressure. More troops, more threats, even the newspapers mocked Menelik. They painted him as the naive leader. But Menelik was far from naive. He started stockpiling weapons, forging alliances, and calling his people to prepare for war. So Menelik sees what's coming, and he doesn't blink. Instead, he sends out the royal SOS across the empire. Nobles, warriors, farmers, the poor, even his rivals, everyone answers the call. Ethiopia begins to mobilize like never before. Menelik wasn't just a king, he was a chess player. He used telegrams to coordinate his forces across massive distances. He imported modern weapons like rifles, Maxim guns, artillery, the whole European buffet. And remember, this wasn't some colonial rebellion. This was a sovereign state arming itself for war. And Italy, meanwhile, they thought it'd be a cakewalk. But it was quite different. Which brings us to the epic Battle of Adwa. It's March 1st, 1896. Dawn breaks over the rugged Adwa mountains in northern Ethiopia. Italy's plan was simple on paper. Launch a surprise, multi-pronged attack before the dawn, and break the Ethiopian lines. But it didn't go as planned. The Italians, numbering around 17,000 troops, were split into 3 columns. And here's the fatal flaw. They lost coordination in the mountainous terrain. Miscommunication, unfamiliar geography, and the sheer size of Ethiopia's mobilized forces led to disaster. On the other side were none other than Emperor Menelik II, Empress Taitu, and generals like Ras Alula, Ras Mikhail, and Ras Mengesha. They all led a united force of nearly 100,000. They were well armed, perfectly positioned, and fighting for the homeland. As the sun rose, Ethiopian forces overwhelmed the fragmented Italian columns one by one. The center column under General Badawi bore the brunt early on. The right wing, led by General Albertone, was encircled and nearly annihilated, and the left, under General Arimondi, tried to hold position, but it didn't take long. The battle lasted most of the day, with intense fighting from early morning into the afternoon. Some Italian units fought to the last man, but by mid-afternoon the battle was clearly lost. Thousands were dead. Around 3,000 Italians were taken prisoner, including high-ranking officers. What makes this battle stand out isn't just the numbers, it's the fact that the non-European empire defeated a modern European army on their own terms and on their own soil. By winning this battle, Menelik didn't just defend Ethiopia, he made sure the world took notice.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
After the Ethiopian victory at Adwa, Italy's colonial dream just took a hit. A few months later, in October 1896, the Italians signed the Treaty of Addis Ababa with Menelik II, and Ethiopia was demanding. Here's what was on the table. Number 1. Total independence. Italy formally and unambiguously recognized Ethiopia's complete and absolute sovereignty. No more funny business with protectorates or diplomatic representations. Ethiopia was a free and independent empire, on its own terms. Number 2. The Treaty of Wuchale, with its sneaky mistranslation clause, was officially annulled. Both sides agreed it was over. Number 3. The prisoner exchange. Ethiopia had thousands of Italian prisoners from the Battle of Adwa, and Italy really wanted them back. Menelik agreed to release them, but not without some gorgeous compensation. We are talking ransoms and the guarantees that Italy wouldn't pull anything sneaky again. Number 4. Redrawing the map. Italy got to keep Eritrea, but only with Ethiopia's grudging recognition. Menelik made it clear. You keep what you've got, but you don't get an inch more. So yeah, this wasn't a peace treaty out of generosity. It was Ethiopia setting the terms. A big diplomatic flex from a country that had just smacked down one of Europe's supposedly modern armies. The impact? Ethiopia gained international legitimacy. It started getting diplomatic recognition from major European powers. Menelik's court received envoys, signed treaties, and basically did everything colonized nations weren't supposed to do. Ethiopia's victory at Adwa wasn't just a military triumph, it was a mic drop on the global stage. For colonized peoples across Africa, the Caribbean, and the Americas, it became a symbol of resistance, dignity, and pride. Newspapers in Harlem were cheering, anti-colonial movements were inspired, and future leaders like Haile Selassie molded in the shadow of Adwa. When Ghana became the first sub-Saharan African country to gain independence in 1957, it chose a flag with red, gold, and green, and a black star in the center. The black star, a tribute to Ethiopia. A shout out to the only African nation that stood tall and said,
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here. Get out of here, man. Shit, I'm saying.
to the colonization and won. Therefore, Menelik II truly lived up to his name.